have unity under the sun. Everybody will sing and dance.
Charles Darwin was a very influential scientist that developed the evolutionary theory. His theory has pointed towards Africa as the cradle of humanity, which has led scientists to look for clues to support it. Darwin's theory was very controversial and widely rejected when it was first published in the 19th century. It was rejected by a mostly Christian Europe due to the one-week story of creation in the Bible. Additionally, the transatlantic slave trade conditioned Europeans to believe that people from Africa were inferior. Therefore, Darwin's evolutionary theory was preposterous to the European people. Regardless, through evolution, humans emerged in Africa. There was a precursor to the Homo sapiens known as Australopithecus. The word Australopithecus means southern ape, which reveals the location where its fossils were found in Africa. The brain of an Australopithecus was a third of the size of modern humans, making their brain capacity low compared to Homo sapiens. There is a clear distinction among the Australopithecines that later hominid species by the fact that an Australopithecus used tools, while later species of hominids made tools.
The fossils, bones, and stone tools found in Africa were important to developing the history of early humans. The evolution of man is supported heavily by these artifacts. New techniques like carbon-14 dating developed in order to better study and understand fossils in geological time. The most vivid evidence found from the late Stone Age were the cave paintings and engravings. These paintings and engravings were brightly colored in red, yellow, orange, and white. They were usually painted or carved on the walls of early human caves and shelters.
The Saharan Desert. When I think of Africa, I think of lions and giraffes and the Sahara Desert and yeah.
The African safari.
The Lion King.
Alright, I feel when it comes to people misconstruing Africa for a country, I think it's just a lot of miseducation and people not taking the time to actually learn. You know, there's like internet, maps, and teachers, and I guess a lot of people go off of like what they see on television growing up, you know, the History Channel and the media, and the media is just so skewed in the way that they will show you what
According to Kim, the history of Africa as a whole is often skewed due to the misinformation produced through the media. The world knows of Africa as being a country that needs to be helped. For instance, commercials insist Americans need to feed the impoverished children. Although this may be unfortunately true for many countries in Africa, it is not true for all of them. There are many myths concerning African countries, such as they all live in huts, are members of tribes, live in the jungle, and are all black. However, through studies of Africa, we are able to tell correctly the history of African countries. The root of the distorted information about Africa can be traced back for hundreds of years. As stated before, Europeans saw themselves as superior due to the transatlantic slave trade. This superiority was also found in America due to leftover racism from the Civil War. We must study Africa in order to do away with these former notions. This way, we can better understand what the real Africa is like, despite the misrepresentations of its history and culture.
Africa is one of 7 continents home to more than 885 million people. Africa comprises 14% of the world's population. Additionally, Africa contains 11.6 million square miles, making it almost a quarter of the total landmass of the entire globe. Africa is composed of 54 countries, each having diverse cultures that reflect their ancient heritage, which has survived foreign influences on the Africans' way of life. Most African countries contain several different spoken languages besides the official state language. Africans speaking over 1,000 different languages throughout the continent can characterize them into 4 major language families, which reflect their origin and linguistic ties: Afro-Asiatic, Igbo-Saharan, Niger-Congo, and Khoisan. Contrary to popular belief, not all African languages contain click sounds. English is surprised of many as one of the most prominent secondary languages spoken in African countries.
One language. There's like a gazillion languages. Like, I'm from Africa, but I have not been to, gosh, how many other countries and tribes and languages and stuff that I don't even know. So to misconstrue like the whole continent as a country is just being ignorant and not using the knowledge that you have with the internet and books and stuff to use that to your advantage and learn more about Africa as a continent, because we all sort of have what's the word I'm looking for, like a root there, in a way. We all are black, but here we're like mixed up with a whole bunch of people. Commercials about how they need to feed kids from Africa, and the flies is all in their faces and stuff. And like when I first got here, and I was like 10 or whatever, and not be able to speak English, and just coming from a place where it's just like family, and the only place I know, so it was like it's no different from here. And people coming to me telling me like, do y'all have clothes there? Like, do y'all, why don't you have like those piercings in your ears?
Many Americans and Europeans think that all Africans live in rural environments. They think that Africans live in poverty and grass huts. Some people even think that Africans only live in the jungle and hunt and grow all of their own food, create their own utensils, and travel no more than 20 to 50 miles away from their hometowns their whole lives. Although this is true for a small portion of the population in Africa, the majority of Africans live in cities and suburbs. They shop at stores, travel throughout the continent and elsewhere, and even use the same types of technologies we have in the United States. For example, Cape Town is a beautiful city filled with modern buildings and businesses that look just like the ones here in the United States.
I studied abroad in Cape Town, South Africa. Africa definitely is not made up of just solely black people. This past summer, as I've learned, there are like 3 distinct races, especially in South Africa. You have your white, you have your Afrikaans, and you have your black people. Afrikaans typically are just solely from Africa. They've never migrated or have family history that live outside of Africa. Your black is what we typically refer to as black. They're a mixture of other races, and then your white are your whites.
Popular culture and media leads the world to believe that all Africans are distinctively black. However, this is a common misconception. Due to the size and scope of the African continent, it has come to embody many geological regions. The peoples that are further from the equator tend to be lighter in complexion, while those that are closer to the equator tend to be darker in complexion. This difference in skin pigmentation allows the appropriate levels of UV rays in the body for the production of vitamin D. In addition to the diversity that exists naturally in Africa, there has also been an influx of culture and racial diversity to the continent from immigration. According to Shillington, Africa was once the center of the world. There have been constant contact between African people and the outside world dating back as early to the Egyptian Empire. Established trade routes throughout the continent of Asia, as well as suspected Arab Islamic expansion into Africa, has brought African people in contact with both Arabs, Asians, and Europeans. These meaningful interactions have contributed to the ever-diversifying Africa.
Since the beginning of studies on human origin, the information that labels Africa as the cradle of humanity has faced opposition. However, according to the Mudimbe and Bates article, African history is as equally important to the world as is European and American history. Africa has been influential to many forms of educational studies. It can be attributed to the definition of many disciplines such as economics, medicine, science, mathematics, anthropology, and various social sciences. Because of these datums, we can see that African knowledge merits just as much achievement and worth
Through
as
African
does
history,
European
the
and
discussion of
American
Darwinism, archaeological evidence found in Africa, and uncovering the truth concerning misconceptions of Africa, we are able to construct a picture that truly illustrates the Africa that is often overlooked.
'Cause this is Africa.